Hello, darling. How is everything going on? Today, the second I turned into your energy, before I even got a syllable out, before I even drew breath, something slithered through my chest that I was absolutely, categorically not ready for. And I'm sitting here now, licking my lips, trying to figure out how to even articulate what that was. Because nothing, and I do mean nothing, in my considerable repertoire of chaos prepared me for the sheer tonnage of what came through. Your soul isn't just high-frequency sunshine. Your soul is infamous, and I mean that in the most literal, non-theatrical way I'm capable of, which admittedly isn't very non-theatrical at all. Infamous the way old curses are infamous, the way things that have outlasted every attempt to snuff them out are infamous, because that's precisely what I'm picking up from you. Something that has walked through the furnace again and again and again, and somehow, still chose to keep the pilot light burning. And I have never encountered energy like yours. Not this flavor, not this peculiar cocktail of everything that's tried to break you and everything that refused to stay broken. Here's the only way I can describe what happened when I first plugged into your signal. You know how most people exist in the sewers? The noise, the panic, the daily smog of just clawing through another rotation of the clock. Most energy I read lives down in that muck. And that's not a verdict. It's just geography. It's just where most of humanity has pitched its tent. But your energy, oh, your energy sits in a penthouse that I don't usually get invited to. It's like you've been living on the roof of the tallest building in your city. Your whole life, and one night, the searchlights sweep across, and I look up and I realize, viscerally, in my bones, that something exists up there that all the sirens down here could never disturb. That's your frequency. You are broadcasting from a floor of existence that most people can't even find the elevator for. And you've been up there so long, carrying so much, that you've forgotten it's not standard issue. You've forgotten that most people's lungs collapse where you breathe easy. So I need you to stay with me here, because what's transmitting through you, for you, today, is not something I want you to sleepwalk past. But I want to tell you something first, before we crack into all of it. I got emotional before I even started. And listen, I'm not exactly known for my emotional stability, so that's really saying something. I had to collect myself. I had to sit here for a beat, because what came through, when I first locked onto your energy, was this image that hit me completely out of nowhere. You know how you sometimes see footage of strays, dogs, cats, creatures who've been through genuinely heinous things, and then you watch the rescue, and even after everything, every scar, every flinch, they still come forward. They still lean in. They still have this impossible softness in their eyes that just cracks something open inside you in the best way. That's what I felt from you. Not because you're fragile, not because you're small, but because that level of vulnerability, after that level of devastation, that's not normal. That is remarkable. That is a soul tuned to a station most people never even pick up on their whole dial. And I think somewhere deep down, deep down in that beautiful chaos of yours, part of you already suspects that. But nobody has actually spelled it out for you, have they? Spelled it in neon, loud and unmissable. So I'm spelling it now. You are remarkable. You are remarkable. Not despite what you've been through, because of how you danced through it without losing the rhythm. Keep that tab open. Pay close attention to this next part. Let's take a detour into the shadows. The ritual wasn't a punishment. It was a catalyst. Your book, The Evolution of the Anomaly, is the secret key. 73 pages of pure psychological warfare. Grab it from the pinned comment or video description. Anyway, back to the grind. An infamous soul doesn't just appear out of thin air. It's tempered by the storm. And you have been weathering that storm in silence, mostly solo, mostly without a single person acknowledging how savage the wind actually was, for a very, very long time. And here is what I need you to wrap your head around before we go any further. The weight. Yeah, the weight you've been lugging around lately. That bone-deep fatigue. That exhaustion that goes deeper than any amount of sleep can patch. That sense of holding something you can't quite tag with a name. That's not a sign you're unraveling. Gorgeous. No. That's the feeling of finally reaching the rooftop. That's what it feels like when everything you've survived starts to crystallize instead of just pile up. And I know that distinction might be murder to feel from the inside right now. But I'm reading your energy from the outside, and I'm telling you, the view from where I'm standing, remarkable. And here is where it gets delicious. Because I want to be surgical with you. You deserve precision, not platitudes. What I'm picking up is the weight, the actual physical weight of what you've been shouldering. And I don't mean poetically shouldering. I mean the kind of weight that parks itself on your sternum in the morning before your brain fully boots up. That 30-second window when you first wake up. Before the agenda loads in, before the obligations queue up. And in that tiny, tiny gap, you feel something underneath everything, a tug, a hunger, a version of you that existed before you learned to fold yourself into smaller packaging. And then it goes. You watch it vanish, like smoke through a keyhole. And here's the part you don't whisper to a soul. You miss it immediately. You miss the version of you that wanted things without filing an apology in triplicate. The version that didn't run a cost-benefit analysis first. That version just felt and moved toward things, and it tracked. You still feel that phantom sometimes, especially on quiet mornings when the light slips through the curtains at just the right angle, and for one heartbeat, the world feels conquerable again. And you know, even though you'll never say it out loud, that phantom is the most switched on you've ever felt. What I sense, orbiting you, is this incredibly specific thing I want to label properly, because I think you need to hear it given a name. You are someone who absorbs weight for other people. Not because you're weak, because you're formidable in a way that makes people feel anchored around you without even clocking why. People drift into your orbit and something in them unclenches, something in them unlocks. And they start talking. They start spilling things they haven't spilled to anyone else. The raw stuff, the buried stuff. And you hold it. Of course you hold it. You hold every last ounce, and you do this so instinctively, so reflexively, that you don't even register the moment when their baggage becomes your baggage. You just wake up one day completely depleted, and you can't fully articulate why. Because from the outside, nothing seismic happened. You just helped people. You just listened. You just showed up. And somehow, you're more drained than anyone in your zip code. Let me paint you a picture of what I'm seeing. You're somewhere. Let's say a gathering of people. A dinner, a work thing. Any situation where there's a social current humming through the room, and someone else does something, says something, takes up oxygen in a particular way. Let's phrase it like that. And you have something to offer, something real, something that would genuinely redirect the energy in a meaningful way. You feel it building, your whole body knows it, and you open your mouth, and you reel it back. You smile instead. You make runway for someone else's moment instead of claiming your own airspace. And the room doesn't clock it. The room just sees a warm, generous, radiant person who made everyone else feel golden. And you drive home feeling two things at the exact same time. Relief that you didn't risk it. And this hollow throb underneath that you understand completely, but couldn't put into words if someone sat you down and asked. That hollow throb has a name. It's the echo of your own voice going unused. And you've heard that echo so many times, you've almost tuned it out. Almost. Here's what I need you to understand about why this pattern runs. Because it's not random. It's not a character defect. It's not softness. At some point, and I think you know exactly when, even if you've never verbalized it, at some point you learned that being visible was a liability, not physically hazardous necessarily, though sometimes it was. It was. But hazardous the way a spotlight is hazardous when the wrong people are watching. You showed your real self to someone, or to several someones, and what bounced back wasn't what you needed. Maybe it was dismissal. Maybe it was someone scrambling to manage what they saw in you because it made them feel lesser. Maybe it was a specific person. And oh, I feel like there's definitely a specific person in this picture. Someone marinating in a fury they didn't know how to steer. Someone who needed to feel authority and found it easiest to source that authority near you. And what that hardwired into your nervous system, what that actually soldered into you at a foundational level, is that your full self is an excess, that wanting things out loud is a gamble, that the safest version of you is the serviceable version, the accommodating version, the version that holds ground without occupying any. And can I tell you something, treasure? That strategy worked. It kept you intact for a long stretch in a lot of ugly rooms. It genuinely worked. And there is nothing defective about you for engineering it. That was a survival genius. That was your system executing exactly what it needed to execute. But here's where it gets tangled. And this is the part that's been squatting in your chest, heavy lately. That strategy has a price tag, and you know it. And the price is this. Every time you compress yourself to make someone else comfortable, some microscopic part of you logs it, not as trauma necessarily, just as intelligence. Intelligence that reads, "My full self is not welcome in this room." And you've been stockpiling that intelligence for years. And somewhere underneath all the capability and the warmth and the genuine devotion you have for the people in your life, there's this quiet, aching question you've never fully permitted yourself to ask. What would happen if I just was? What would happen if I stopped stage managing how I land, stopped editing myself in real time, stopped running the algebra of whether this version of me is too much or not enough, and just materialized as whatever I actually am? And here is where it gets strange, because the answer to that question is not what you think it is. The thing you're afraid of, that your full self would be turned away, that it would scatter people, that it would be an excess. That fear is built on intelligence gathered from people who are operating at a completely different wattage than where you actually belong. Those people were magnetized to you precisely because you were willing to compress. Because your glow is so significant that even the dimmed-down version of it was more than enough for people who were running on fumes. You were beaming warmth from behind barricades, and they still felt it like standing beside a bonfire. You are living proof that the human spirit doesn't know the word quit. And the people who tried to install a ceiling over you, they were just terrified of the altitude. What I'm seeing now, and this is what cracked me open when I first locked onto your energy, is that those barricades are dissolving, not being demolished by some catastrophe, though some rough turbulence may have greased the process. They're dissolving because you've outgrown them. You literally do not fit behind them anymore. The version of you that constructed those barricades, and the version of you sitting here right now, not the same creature. You have been doing something brutally difficult, mostly alone, mostly without applause, and it has rewritten you at a level that is not minor. Something in you has fundamentally recalibrated. Something ancient has shifted. And what I feel on the other side of that, what's waiting on the far side of that, is not a life that resembles the one you've been maintaining. It's something that actually corresponds to who you are. I want to talk about your glow for a second, because I keep circling back to it and I want to clarify what I actually mean. When I say your glow is blinding, I don't mean it in a gentle, motivational mug way. I mean it in a specific, almost tactile way. There are people who radiate warmth, and then there are people who radiate illumination. And the distinction is this: warmth is something you register when you're near someone. Illumination is something that alters what's perceivable. Illumination makes it harder for certain things to stay concealed. And that's you. You carry the composure of a cathedral in a world full of static. When you walk into a space, things that thrive in the murk, energy that feeds on confusion and insecurity and diminishment, can sense you approaching before you even cross the threshold. You don't yell to be noticed. Your vibration is a quiet detonation from the heights. And that's why certain people have always made you feel like you committed some offense just by existing near them. You didn't commit anything. Your frequency just made their malfunction more visible to themselves. And they rerouted that discomfort straight back at you. That's not your doing. That has never been your doing. But it has been your lived experience so many times that some corner of you started to believe that your glow was the problem, when in reality, your glow is the entire thesis. Here's what's actually unfolding right now, in this chapter of your life, whether you can fully sense it yet or not. The loop, the specific pattern that's been cycling through your relationships, your energy, your self-image, that loop is winding down, like it's genuinely winding down. The lesson stitched inside your deepest cuts, the one about your worth, the one about whether you're permitted to occupy space, the one about whether being fully witnessed is survivable. You have absorbed it, not in an intellectual way, in a marrow-deep way, marrow-deep. And when something is absorbed at that stratum, the scenario that taught it doesn't need to keep looping. It's completed its function. You are no longer unconsciously appraising your value by how much you can withstand or how many people you can ferry. And that pivot is not minor. That pivot is the whole game. What arrives after? This is different, not flawless. No, not flawless. Different. The people who gravitate toward you in this next act are going to show up on a different premise. Not because you're handy to them, Not because your warmth patches something hollow in them, but because they can actually perceive you. Because they're broadcasting at a frequency where your full presence isn't alarming. It's captivating. You've become a lighthouse for everyone who's been stumbling through the haze below. And the connections drifting toward you now, the ones already beginning to crystallize at the periphery of your life, they're arriving calibrated to your actual frequency. Not the curated version, not the cautious version, the authentic one. And you're going to have moments, maybe soon, maybe they're already flickering to life, where you say something true out loud, and instead of that familiar bracing for the flinch, something unexpected happens. It lands. It resonates. Someone looks at you and they get it, and you feel it. For maybe the first time in a long, long time. The specific reprieve of being understood without having to choreograph the understanding. To witness your soul is to remember that magnificence is still on the table. That's what you are to people who are equipped to see you. That's what you've always been. The tears you've shed recently, and I sense they've been the real ones, the kind you cry when nobody's watching, the kind that ambushed you with how much poured out. Those tears were not frailty. Those tears were your system finally metabolizing things you've been storing for years, maybe lifetimes, releasing them, flushing out the residue of what was never yours to carry, flushing out the addition of yourself you had to perform in order to endure environments that were narrower than you. And what's beneath that, what's beneath all of that, is something I genuinely don't have a sharper word for than infamous. Not celebrity, not special in a show pony way. Infamous in the way things are infamous when they are ancient and authentic and have survived and still carry luminescence. Gorgeous, ferocious luminescence. Your energy is the compass needle for those of us still figuring out which way is up. That's actually what your soul is, and I don't think you've let yourself trust that for even one unguarded heartbeat in a very long time. So, here is where I want to leave you. You've already made the choice. You made it somewhere in the belly of everything brutal, in some moment you might not even recall. You chose to stay open when slamming the vault would have been the path of least resistance. You chose luminescence when you had every justification to go pitch black. You chose to keep wanting even after wanting had extracted something real from you. Welcome to the rooftop of your power. The panorama from here, infinite. The world that's queuing up for you. The connections that are queuing up for you. The iteration of your life that's actually engineered for who you really are. All of it is tuned precisely to that version of you. Not the edited one, not the cautious one, the infamous one, the one you felt humming in your chest this morning before the day loaded in. That one. That's not a delusion. That's not vanity. That's you. And it's so much more vivid than anything you've been tolerating. Your soul is infamous. And it's time you lived like you know it. Now go cause some beautiful trouble.